Paradox Rift introduced many new deck ideas for the Pokemon trading card game, including the format called Gym Leader Challenge. Today, we'll be looking at a deck list that I like to call Invulnerable Psychic. This deck revolves around three main Pokemon: Espathra with the ability Stance, Crobat with the ability Sound Veil, and Dragapult with the ability Infiltrator. Let's first review what is Gym Leader Challenge. Gym Leader Challenge, or GLC, is a format with a specific deck construction rule set. This is a singleton format, so there can only be one copy of any card name in the deck, excluding basic energies. This is also a monotype format, so there can only be one type of Pokemon within the deck. No rulebox cards are allowed in this format, so Pokemon EX, GX, A-Spec Trainers, Prism Star cards, and other rulebox cards cannot be played. Finally, only cards within the expanded card pool are allowed. This means that cards from before the Black and White era are not playable. If you have any questions about the rules, you can always go to gymleaderchallenge.com/FAQ for a deeper dive into those rules. I'll be going over core deck strategy and supporting cards, how to make the deck more consistent, how to accelerate energy and evolutions into play, and some other support cards. I'll also talk about the weaknesses of the deck and other cards I've considered putting in the deck list. The deck list link will be provided at the end of the video and in the description. With that, let's get started. Espathra, Crobat, and Dragapult all have abilities that prevent damage. The ability of Espathra, Stance, and the ability of Crobat, Sound Veil, are very similar to each other. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may prevent all damage from and effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon until the end of your opponent's next turn. For one turn, Espathra and Crobat can be effectively invulnerable from your opponent's attacks. Dragapult has the ability Infiltrator. If any damage is done to this Pokemon by attacks, flip a coin. If heads, prevent that damage. Let's say you have Golbat in the active spot with Flittle and Dragapult on the bench. You can evolve Golbat into Crobat to get one turn of invulnerability. Then, you can evolve Flittle into Espathra, switch Espathra into the active position, and get one turn of invulnerability again. Finally, you can swap Dragapult into the active position to use its ability. Each part of this sequence is a turn, and during each turn, your opponent has limited options of dealing damage to your Pokemon. Let's now go over how to make the strategy more consistent, starting with Espathra. Espathra evolves from Flittle, and there's one copy of Flittle that has 0 retreat cost. This makes Flittle a good pivot, and pivots are good in the Pokemon trading card game because they allow you to be flexible in which attacker to use. This gives more utility for using the Espathra line. Espathra has the attack Glittering Eyes, which does 70 damage, and if Tulip is in your discard pile, this attack does 70 more damage. Tulip is a supporter card that puts up to 4 in any combination of Psychic Pokemon and basic Psychic Energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. This is similar to what Nessa does for the Water type. Tulip is a recovery card that provides synergy with Espathra. Of course, Tulip is most useful when it is in the discard pile. There are several ways of getting Tulip in there. Battle Compressor searches your deck for 3 cards and discards them. Gallade has the ability Buddy Catch. Once per turn, you may search your deck for a supporter card. You can use this to search for Tulip and then use Tulip, putting it into the discard pile. Finally, you can use Teammates to search out Tulip in a card to be able to discard Tulip. There are many other ways of getting Tulip into the discard pile. These are just some examples. Let's now talk about the Crobat line. Crobat evolves from Golbat, which evolves from Zubat. The best Zubat card that fits with this deck is probably Zubat with Free Flight. If this Pokemon has no energy attached to it, this Pokemon has no retreat cost. This makes it a good pivot. The best Golbat card to pair with Zubat and Crobat is probably Golbat with Sneaky Bite. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. This Golbat card stands out because it has a 0 retreat cost. Dragapult. There's not too much to talk about this line because there are not many good Dreepy and Dracloak cards. The main reason to use this line is Dragapult itself. It has a 0 retreat cost, so it synergizes with the other 0 retreat Pokemon in this deck so that you can run the card Featherball. Featherball can fetch Crobat, Golbat, Dragapult, and Flittle. Featherball also creates more synergy with Ball Guy because most decks run Nest Ball, Level Ball, Ultra Ball, Quick Ball, and Hisuian Heavy Ball. The downside to Espathra and Crobat is that their abilities are only useful on the turn that they evolve, which means that after that they are vulnerable to damage. We can take advantage of cards like Devolution Spray and Scoop Up Net to put the evolution Pokemon back in our hand and play them a second time during the next turn. If Espathra and Crobat are knocked out, we can use recovery cards like Rescue Stretcher, and Super Rod to be able to put those cards back into the deck to use for later. This largely solves the problem of your opponent dealing damage to the active position, but we also need protection for our bench Pokemon. There are cards that mitigate this problem though. We have Mew with Bench Barrier, prevent all damage done to your bench Pokemon by your opponent's attacks. We also have the Stadium Sky Pillar, prevent all effects of the opponent's attacks, including damage done to bench Pokemon, both yours and your opponent's. There are several options to search these cards in the deck. In terms of extra damage modifiers, we have Dragapult's attack, Phantom Force that deals 120 damage and puts 3 damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon in any way you like. We also have Golbat's ability, Sneaky Bite, which puts 2 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon. We can use these to fix the damage numbers for high HP Pokemon or take extra knockouts on the bench. The main attackers of this deck require multiple energy to attack. This is where Malamar comes in. Malamar has the ability Psychic Recharge. Once during your turn, you may attach a Psychic Energy card from your discard pile to one of your benched Pokemon. We also have Raihan. You can play this card only if one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. If you do, search your deck for a card and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. Finally, we have the Stadium card Dimension Valley. Each Psychic Pokemon's attacks cost 1 colorless less. The energy acceleration and cost reduction are important for consistently attacking each turn. This largely solves the energy problem, but we can also increase the pace of the deck by including the Technical Machine Evolution. Choose up to 2 of your bench Pokemon. For each of those Pokemon, search your deck for a card that evolves from that Pokemon and put it onto that Pokemon to evolve it, then shuffle your deck. We can use this to evolve Ralts and Dreepy into Kirlia and Dracloak respectively. This allows us to get more consistent and stronger turn 2 attacks. The best Pokemon to use the evolution attack is probably Wobbuffet. Wobbuffet has the ability Bide Barricade. As long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, each Pokemon in play, in each player's hand, and in each player's discard pile has no abilities. This ability is broken because it excludes Psychic Pokemon, so you can stop your opponent from using their abilities while also setting up your Pokemon's abilities. That largely sums up the core of the deck, but there are many other supporting cards for the Psychic type. These include Mysterious Treasure, Fog Crystal, Marshadow, Horror Energy, and Mystery Energy. I won't be going over these cards because they appear in most Psychic decks, but let me know if you want me to do a video on staple cards for each type. This deck has a couple of notable weaknesses. Cards that stop abilities are especially problematic. For example, Hex Maniac stops the abilities Stance, Sound Veil, Infiltrator, and Bench Barrier. Your best answers to cards like Hex Maniac are just to set up multiple attackers, and to use Hand Disruption like N, Marnie, and Let Loose Marshadow to prevent your opponent from playing Hex Maniac on the turn they want to. Similarly, we have the card Silent Lab, which is a Stadium card that stops basic Pokemon abilities. This stops Mew's Bench Barrier and Wobbuffet Bide Barricade. Silent Lab is able to bump Sky Pillar and stop Mew Bench Barrier, so beware of Silent Lab when you're facing any kind of spread deck. Several Pokemon can also stop abilities. Galarian Weezing, Slacking, and Garbodor all have abilities that stop your abilities. If you want the core deck strategy to work, you'll need to knock out these Pokemon. This deck is also weak to cards that move around your Pokemon. These include Boss's Orders, Guzma, Escape Rope, and many other cards. The best way to deal with these cards is to create a consistent and strong board state. There's only a certain number of times your opponent will be able to play these cards. So, force your opponent to play these resources earlier so that later in the game, you can use your core deck strategy and not worry about having these bossing effects. There are many cards that I considered for the deck that might even be worth running, but I haven't gone around to testing all of them. For now, I won't be playing these cards in the deck, but I listed them here so that I can explain my thought process and maybe hear some of your thoughts about these cards. The first is Lily's Pokédoll. I thought about this card for when you've already evolved Espathra and Crobat, and you don't have Dragapult in play. So maybe Lily's Pokédoll could be useful to stall one turn. This card specifically does not allow your opponent to take a prize card when it is knocked out. However, I had some deck space issues when trying to fit this card, so I left it out for now. I also had deck space issues when I was trying to fit in Xatu. The ability is good, but the energy recovery and energy acceleration of Malamar might be better in certain scenarios. Dragapult and Espathra attack with only 2 energy, so you only need 1 energy acceleration engine. and I think Malamar was better fit for what I was thinking. Xatu might be better in some scenarios, but I left it out for now. Luxurious Cape is a great card, don't get me wrong, but I had some deck space issues trying to fit it, so I left this one out too. Next, we have the supporter card AZ, which has the same effect as the supporter Professor Tourist Scenario from Paradox Rift. This card is okay, but it competes with Scoop Up Net and Devolution Spray for the same effect. Scoop Up Net is better just because it's on an item card, and Devolution Spray allows you to keep the energy on the Pokemon. So AZ is outclassed by those two item cards. I probably won't be playing AZ, but it's still worth considering if you want more of the put Pokemon back into your hand effect. Diancie is a card that I really want to play in the deck. It has the ability Princess's Curtain. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, whenever your opponent plays a supporter card from their hand, prevent all effects of that card done to your benched basic Pokemon. This card is really good in saving your Flittle, Zubat, and Dreepy from getting bossed early. It also has an attack that allows you to draw cards, so if you're stuck, this can get you out of some binds, and it can also be your target for the Technical Machine Evolution to evolve your other Pokemon. My issue with Diancie is that it doesn't stop the effect of Escape Rope, and it also sometimes sits on the bench doing nothing. Finally, we have Reversal Energy. Reversal Energy is very good when you're behind because it allows you to attack with Crobat with a single energy attachment with no additional acceleration. However, I'm running Counter Energy in my version of the deck, and I don't quite like Reversal Energy just because it's not as flexible for use on basic Pokemon. With that, we've completed an overview of the deck list. The deck list is on the right, and a link is provided on the left here. I don't think the deck in its current form is that strong, but I do see some places where maybe I could improve the deck. I think the deck will be fun to play, and that's the most important thing to me. I'll be playing it at my locals. Yeah, thanks for watching till the end. Let me know your thoughts about the deck in the comments, and yeah, until next time, bop.